Hey there, sisterhood. April here, and I'm so excited to launch you into the universe of what's her superpower. Superpowers, sisterhood, secrets revealed. What's her superpower explodes onto the scene, alternating between real talk solo episodes and electrifying guest interviews. Good morning, everyone. And hopefully it's morning where you're at. It's morning where I'm at. So I am here with the amazing Becky Burroughs, and she is a life leadership coach for Christian women. She's also an author, a speaker, and a minister. So welcome, Becky. We're so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, April. I'm honored to be here with you today.
Oh, you're so sweet. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about your journey.
Okay. I am a lifelong Texan. You might be able to tell that in my voice. And I was married for 41 years. I have 4 children and 19 grandchildren. And those grandkids, they are my world. I have a very active lifestyle. I love to do a lot of different things, from riding my bike to working out to quilting to traveling. Traveling is one of my very favorite things to do. I feel like God created this world for us to enjoy, and I want to see as much of it face to face as I can. I've had a wonderful life, and it's not over, but I have many, many years to look back on. And yet, when I look at where I am now, there is not one thing in my life that I thought was like it was going to be. I had this dream for what my life was going to be like, and it's all turned out to be very, very different. Wonderful in many ways, but very, very different than what I had dreamed about and what I had hoped for. And so that's kind of why I'm talking about that today, because I want to give other women hope that just because your life doesn't turn out like you think it's going to, doesn't mean that it can't be wonderful in its own way.
Yeah, exactly. And that is really one of my big goals for this podcast, is for women to see the possibilities. And
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter what you've been through. I think God has brought us on this journey that we call life. And, He has the ultimate plan. So it's just a matter of whether we are obedient or
Absolutely.
we're a little more hard-headed. And, it takes Him a little longer to get us where He wanted us to be to start with. So
I agree.
Tell us about your journey.
So, my life was very, I call it typical, very normal. I married very young, which we did back in those days. I married at the age of 19, and I became a speech language pathologist, and I did that for 25 years. Kind of segued into, I'm a lifelong learner, kind of an education junkie. So I go back and I get certification in something else, and then something else, and something else. Anyway, I ended up becoming a high school principal in a Christian school, and that led me into ministry because a church recruited me to come work there. And I'm still working at that church. It's been 18 years now, in a variety of roles. But along the way, like I said, I've been married 41 years. And there was a very short span of time when, in just a few years, my dad died suddenly. My husband of 41 years walked out the door, ending our marriage. My mom died very slowly. My job changed. My role changed at the church, which was not a big deal. Happens all the time based on where they need you at the moment. But for me, it became one more loss, one more shift in my identity, because we tend to identify, what do you do? And that kind of becomes our identity. And I had a full-blown identity crisis. I was no one's daughter. I was no one's wife. I had this new role to adjust to, and I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to grieve so many things at once. And so I kind of began this quest to figure out, I thought, okay, if I'm going to have to do this, I'm going to learn how to grieve well. I want to grieve in a resilient way. I don't want my life to end. I've seen too many women who, when their husbands died or walked out the door, their lives just stopped. They didn't know how. Maybe if they'd been married a long time like I had, they didn't know how to to go back to being who they were. Because when we're married, it's so much we like to do this, we go here, here's how we spend our time, that you sometimes can lose touch with who you are, just you. Mm-hmm. So I went on this quest to figure out who I was at the core, who God made me to be, without and kind of letting go of, which is easier to do, by the way, with divorce than it is when your husband or your spouse dies. There's a need for widows sometimes to cling to mm-hmm. what they had with their husband. And I get that. When you divorce, it's different. You want to let go. And so I went back to school and I got certification as a professional coach. And I chose to focus on Christian women, in particular, women who are in ministry, women who run nonprofits, or women who have their own small businesses, because I've done all those things. And I've been in leadership over 50 years and have learned some things and would love to, and some of them I learned the hard way. And so I'd love to be able to guide other women so they don't have to learn things the hard way. And in the course of working through my grieving, so many people that I'm close to would come up to me and go, how did you do it? I mean, I see what you're doing. I see how you've had, how? And I really didn't know how. And so I decided to write a book. Mm-hmm. And I published it. It was published in April of 2023. It's called Come Back Home to You, Navigate Life's Transitions and Embrace Next Chapter Living. And the premise of the book, in it, I weave a lot of personal stories with coaching principles that in order to really rediscover who you are, you have to there's a lot of reflection, a lot of personal self-reflection that has to go along. I think it's tragic personally when a woman will quit a job or leave a marriage because she says, I've lost who I am. I don't know who I am anymore. And that's really no one's doing but our own. And so I don't think it's necessary. In my case, my marriage left me. So it wasn't something I chose, but it was an opportunity to figure out who I am in this chapter of my life. We have so many chapters, and the major life transition that you go through is a bridge from one chapter to the next. And so I'm still figuring out, who am I in this chapter? What do I love to do? How do I want to spend my time? What new dream do I want to have for myself in the future? And so that's just a little bit more about my journey.
That is, there's so much, and I hate to say good stuff because there's a lot of bad stuff in there, but that journey has brought you to this point. And mm-hmm. I think a lot of that, I think that's what our lives are. It's a journey through different transitions, and especially as women, because, we leave home sometimes, especially like you said, back then we got married, right? We went from daddy's house to our husband's right. house. And, mm-hmm. And then when you have a family and your kids leave, you go through that transition of having an empty nest, mm-hmm. and God forbid you go through divorce, and you're going to have loss along the way, because as we get older, that happens.
Yes.
And it definitely is. And even like I was in the military for 20 years, mm-hmm. and when I retired, that was a transition that nobody warned you about.
That's right.
Nobody says, because, when you come in, they're like, you do this and you do this and blah, blah, blah. And getting out was a lot more involved than getting in. I can tell you that much. And there's not a good layout just to go through the process of getting out of the military. And then you get out and you're like, now what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
There was a lot of people who it's where are you going to live? Well, it depends on where I get a job. Really? That's what your life depends on? So, which I thought was so sad.
Yeah.
You were going to say something.
Well, I define a major life transition, and that's why what you just described fits fully into this. A major life transition is when something happens in your life that for you is so significant. You're not the same anymore. You're different for having gone through that transition. And for many of us, the very first major life transition is graduation from high school, and making that decision of, do I go away to college? Do I get a job? Do I join the military? What do I do? And then for some of us, we have major life transitions as children. In the last chapter of the book, I interview other women about their major life transitions. And it was so interesting to me. There were two different women that I interviewed. One lost her dad when she was a child, the other lost her mom. These women didn't know each other. I just sat there and listened as I talked to each one individually, and it was like listening to the same story over and over again, the way it affected them. For them, it was obviously a major life transition. And so we have them all through life. You mentioned empty nest, buying a home. You know, a major life transition can be a good thing too. You say, hey, it's time to buy our first house, or it's time to buy a bigger house. We now have 3 kids, but we don't often realize that with change, even good change, with change comes loss, and with loss comes grief. And when you leave the house where that house you got married in and move to the house where you're going to raise your children, it's important to take the time to grieve the memories and what you are used to and all the habits and rituals you had in that old house as you prepare for this new one. And sometimes we don't realize that. We don't take the time to do that. Then we get in the new house, the new job, the new town, and go, why am I not as excited as I thought I would be? Why is it so hard to get used to this? And it's because we didn't take the time to grieve.
Yeah. And something you touched on also was divorce. Mm-hmm. And my first divorce, I remember driving away from the house because I left. I was the one that left. And I was driving out of the neighborhood just in tears, you know, and I thought to myself, what are you crying about? You could easily turn around and go back. But I knew in my heart I couldn't, but I almost felt guilty. I didn't realize it was grief to start with, because, you know, it took a little while. But I think that people just don't realize, they don't give themselves time. Either they're angry or, you know, there's battles, whatever, they get caught up in all that. But it is you're grieving of what could have been.
Absolutely. And the loss of the dream is one of the biggest aspects of grief. I've interviewed a woman who had a child born with special needs, and she talked a lot about what her life was like compared to a woman, you know, that has a child that's healthy in every way. And not only in the moment, what she was grieving, how her life was different than what she expected, but the dream she had, not only for her life, but for her child's life. And certainly in the case of divorce, or when you become widowed and no one ever, it always seems to be a surprise, you know, unless your spouse has a lingering illness. There is a loss of the dream. We all just kind of secretly fantasize that you're going to die together holding hands, like in The Notebook, you know, and in your head, you can go, I know one of us is going to go before the other, but we just don't generally let ourselves think about that. And so it's that job that you thought was the ideal job. And then over time, you realize it's not. You have to grieve that loss of that dream. So in the beginning, I said, there's nothing in my life that's the way I thought it was going to be. And I'm talking about down to I had this fantasy of all my kids would buy houses on my street. I mean, I knew it was an unrealistic fantasy when I had it, but I could still have it. And, the grandkids would be in and out of my house all the time. Not one of them live in the same city as me. I had to grieve that. I had to grieve that they did what was best for them, their families, their jobs. And hey, it's a 4-hour drive. It's not a big deal. My career, I got 2 college degrees in speech language pathology. I thought I was going to do that for life. And it was a wonderful career, but it reached an end for me when something new opened up that was stimulating to me. And it meant I was going to learn more things. And so I look back on my professional career and I'm like, I would never have met this. How did I go from speech pathologist to principal to minister? I would never have guessed I was going to do that. And then, of course, the divorce. I'm married for life. And certainly when you've been together 41 years, you think, okay, we're over the hump. We're on the downhill side. We're going to make this. Doesn't always work out that way. And yet that's not the end of me. That is not the end. I just now have new dreams. And I have new things that I look forward to. And I actually feel like I am right now the most authentic version of who God made me to be than I've ever been in my life, because I'm not morphing to get along with, a spouse, or morphing to be a mom to children, and the things that we do willingly and that need to be done, right? When a bunch of people live in the same house. And so it can be very exciting, but you have to do some work.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And the work is a process also, just like our lives have
Absolutely.
been a process. You can't do everything at once because it's a lot. I mean,
It is.
since I retired in 2014, I can't believe this year will be 10 years, but it has been a process, and it's little bite-sized pieces. And it's as I was ready, because you have to be ready for that. Someone can't force you to do it. But you're right. We get, especially as women, we're so busy taking care of everybody else. I had a conversation with a lady once, and we were talking about dream lives, and I was like, what's your dream life look like? And she said, well, I don't have a dream life for me. I don't have any dreams for me. Just I have dreams for my kids. And before I could even stop myself, I was like, that is so sad. And I didn't, I wasn't being mean. It just broke my heart that someone doesn't have any kind of dreams for themselves. I think that's so important for us.
It is extremely important, and it's no one's responsibility but yours, right? We all have dreams for our children. I don't in any way expect them to live into my dreams. I just have secret hopes and wishes and dreams, but it is their life. There's a chapter in my book about self-care, and I wanted to include that. So I began talking to different women. And when I would talk to Christian women, many of them would say, oh, this self-care thing, this, I need my me time, and it's all about me. And women shouldn't be that way, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, wow, that term is very misunderstood. So I began to kind of come up with a definition of what I see as self-care. And it's really me taking care of the physical, the mental, the social, the spiritual, and the emotional me. It is no one else's job to make sure that I'm well fed, or that I exercise, or that I rest, or that I have, hobbies and interests, and take care of my mental health. That's my responsibility. It is my responsibility to take care of me so that I'm available to take care of everybody that I love, that I want to be there for. It's like that story, it's the same thing. Every airplane, every airline tells you the same thing about your oxygen mask. You put it on yourself first, because if you don't put it on yourself, you're not there to put it on your child. You're gone. And it's the same way with self-care. If I don't love myself enough to take care of myself, then I'm going to show up as this used up, washed up, worn out version of myself. And I can be patting myself on the back that, but I'm taking care of everyone else. But at what price? And who is this person that's showing up to take care of them? I think they would much rather have a enriched, fulfilled me than a used up, washed up me.
Yeah, definitely. And that is, we can't pour from an empty cup. And if we are not taking care of ourselves to fill our cup, then you get to the point where you are useless, and, other things come with that. You're, I can't think of the word right now, but, you have a little like, oh, I give to you, but you don't do for me kind of thing.
Right.
And even though, like you said, it is our responsibility. And if we're not doing that for ourselves, saying, you know what, mom needs to go out and take a walk right now, just to get away, to center ourselves. And because we do lose ourselves as we're going through the process of life, whether it's to a spouse or children or parents or whatever.
And I think what helps me remember the importance of self-care is when it comes to children, everything I do is modeling for my child. So when I choose to neglect my own self-care, I'm teaching my children to neglect their self-care. It will not matter to them what I say to them. They're watching what I do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that is the case in 99.9% of the things that we do. They might hear us, but they see us more, in action. So let's see. License. Travel. You touched on travel. I love to travel, especially being in the military. I've been almost all the way around the world. What's your favorite place that you've ever been to?
Wow. I would have to say Italy, just because, well, I have several. I've been to Italy a couple of times. My daughter lived there for one semester when she was in university. And so I went over there to see her. And so she was able to just be a private little tour guide for me. And that's fun because I'm not one of those that enjoys planning the trip. I like to do trips that others have planned for me. An unexpected country. I didn't expect to love Israel as much as I did. A lot of people dream of going to the Holy Lands. I've always been a little timid about that because of the, unrest there. But there was a situation a few years ago where I went with a friend and we hired a local missionary to be our guide. And I was unprepared for how emotional it would be for me to stand at the Jordan River. And I cried there, and I cried in Jerusalem, and I cried on Calvary, and I cried everywhere I went. I cried because I thought, my Lord has been here. Oh my! I had a story about each of those places. It was just pretty incredible. But honestly, I can't think of a place I visited that I did not love, because I've never enjoyed. In college, I did not enjoy taking humanities and seeing pictures of things. Just wasn't appealing to me at all. But then you go and you see it in 3 dimension, and it's like that picture doesn't begin to capture the beauty of this. And so I hope to travel more, always looking for an opportunity to go somewhere. Usually if somebody says, hey, you want to go? Yes. Before I even know where they're talking about, especially if it's someplace I've never been before. I have a goal of going to all 50 states in the United States, and I've been to, I think, 28. So I need to get cracking on that, but love to travel.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we said when we retired. We were going to see our country because we've seen so much of the world that,
Yes.
you don't see what's close to you. So we're looking forward to that. We're to the point where out west is where we haven't been.
For me, it's the top 2 states all the way across. It's crazy.
Well, we're going to Maine in July of this year. We're going to Maine for a family vacation.
Oh, wow. I hear it's beautiful. I haven't been there yet.
Yeah. Now, Italy, my favorite memory, I was stationed in Italy for 3 years. So, yeah, it's tough. That was my very first
it was a hard
station.
gig.
Yeah, my very first duty station. And I was like, I like this Navy thing. Yeah, this is good. Midnight mass at the Vatican. Oh, but I tell you what, those nuns are a little vicious. They will take you out to get close to the Pope. I'm just saying.
Oh, wow. Well, we didn't get to do that, but we did stay in I guess it's a hotel run by the nuns right outside the Vatican. And we'd open our windows at night, could hear the choir practice. It was just incredible.
Yeah. So much in the world to see. So now what's in store for this year for you? Your business, your life? What do you have planned?
Well, speaking of travel, I'm going on an Alaskan cruise in August. I'm getting out of Texas in August. Last year, we had 3-digit temperatures for like 2 months straight. So that'll be a first for me, and that'll knock another state off my list. Professionally, I'm launching a podcast within the next few weeks. It's called Leadership Becomes Her, and it's simple strategic solutions for Christian women who lead. I also am launching a group coaching program for women in ministry called Kairos Cohort. And it's designed to give women, very often in churches, you might have one woman on staff as a minister with all these men. It's still very male driven. And there's just a lot of need for community, a need for a safe place outside of your church location to talk with other women who understand your world and to collaborate and receive coaching. And so I'm really excited about that. But those are the main things that I've got on the horizon.
Oh, great. You know what? I have to connect you. I have she was a chaplain in the Navy, and she is in Georgia, I want to say. But yeah, she's a minister at a I don't know if she's the head minister, but yeah, I'll connect you.
I would love that. I also do, this is not new, I do it twice a year. I've been doing it for several years. I do a leadership boot camp for women in ministry. And it's really, from women who are just getting started all the way through, because for a lot of women, they may be trained to do what they're doing, but they realize no one has trained them in leadership. And so we work on some very foundational principles of how to have credibility and courage and communication and conflict and things like that. And it's a 4-week workshop, and I'll have another one coming up this April that I'm real excited about.
Nice. All right. There's 2 questions I ask everybody.
Okay.
The first one is, from a woman's point of view, what is your superpower that you bring into your business?
My superpower, don't know that it's, wow, never thought about it as a woman. I think more, are you familiar with the Enneagram?
Yes.
I'm an Enneagram 5. And so I'm a thinker, I'm a strategist, I'm a planner, I'm a people watcher, I'm a learner. And so it's, I guess partly as a woman and partly as an Enneagram 5, that's what I bring to my business is, and certainly at work, in the church that I work in, the things that people say about me, you're so wise. And I'm thinking, I don't know how wise I am, but I do think a lot before I speak. So maybe that's it. I don't know. But that's probably the thing that I bring.
Great. Yeah, I've learned to, as I've gotten older, take a moment before I say something. And
Yes.
Part of that comes from, I hate to apologize.
Yes. I don't like to be wrong.
Yes.
I used to think that when someone asked me a question, they needed an answer. And someone taught me years ago that when someone asks you a question, they deserve the best answer you can give them. So you need to be okay with, wow, that's a really important question. I'm going to give that some thought, and I'm going to get back to you at this time. That has saved me because it's given me permission to really think, because I don't like to have to come back and go, well, I spoke off the cuff, but now that I've thought about it, here's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, some people my husband's a processor. So I can ask him a question and go an hour later and he'll answer me. And I'm like, yeah, I'm way past that, honey. That ship has sailed. That decision's been made. Sorry.
Yeah.
And the last question is, what is your word for 2024?
Well, interestingly enough, I have one. I usually don't do that because I'm a words person. I love words and I have a hard time narrowing it down. And so in true fashion to being me, I couldn't narrow it down to one word. So I narrowed it down to 2. This is my first year to do a word, and I chose a phrase, and it is laser focus. I have figured out that because I have a full-time job and because I have a side gig as a coach and because I have lots of interests and I have 19 grandchildren, I am pulled in so many different directions. I have not been my best self this last year. I've had a hard time staying on task. I jump from one thing to the other just because I just have so many things. And so I thought, you know what, this year I'm going to approach tasks with laser focus. And it looks different for different tasks. For some, it means, scheduling it and time blocking and deciding what days I'm going to do this and that and putting certain things on the shelf, but laser focus.
That's so good. Well, and it's hard when you have so many interests. And I think that's just one of the things that as women, we do. And we're so used to multitasking but a laser focus when it comes to certain things really pays off because you do it better, you do it faster, and then you can move on to the next thing instead of doing a little bit here and then, I got to go.
Exactly. And one of the most successful areas in which I've done this is, I work partly from home and partly away from home. And so it's very easy to sit here at this computer and just lose track of time. And so every day I make myself walk away at 5:00 and, I'll do dinner. And then after that, I do something I enjoy. So I'm either quilting or I'm working a huge puzzle or just something that I enjoy, because it helps me sleep. If I'm working right up until bedtime, now I can't sleep because I'm still working in bed. And so that is just very simple example of how having laser focus, being committed to a goal, has really paid off for me.
Yep. And that self-care.
Self-care all the way.
Yep. Well, Becky, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And I know your story is going to speak to so many women, and you're going to be such an inspiration to them. And you already are.
Oh, I hope so. My book is available on Amazon. Come Back Home to You.
All right. And we will have Becky's contact information in the show notes. So make sure that if you're interested, you reach out to her. And we will talk to you soon, Becky.
Thank you.
Bye. Forget unicorns. Unlock your true potential with actionable tips, inspiring stories, and a whole lot of laughs. Join the mission. Subscribe now. Find your own What's Her Superpower. Join the mission.